it's a really difficult time for the industry, for our country, and for the whole economy. But most of all, I think what really pains me, and I'm sure pains all of us, is the tragedy we see happening in India. There's so many of us in India who work on daily wages, who need to earn an income to bring food on their table. And I've often asked myself the question, I said, you know, if I was earned a daily income, and I have children, I have twins who are 13, and I couldn't put food on the table for them, and they were hungry, they were unwell. Many people will unfortunately die, and Nakul gave some figures on that as well. So the whole tragedy that is happening in our country, on the impact on human life, and I'm not even talking about economics now or business, on human life, is catastrophic. It's certainly, I think, probably something like this happened during the Depression, but certainly not after that. And, you know, the people have already, Jyotsna and has already covered the point on government support. We're all disappointed that government has done nothing for tourism and hospitality, even though we employ so many people. But I think the most important thing in my mind when we look forward actually is really, how do we generate demand? Because we can't live on government support. That's an intermediary support measure. Ultimately, what needs to happen is people need to be able to visit hotels, go to restaurants and dine. And I think, so I have a slightly different perspective, which I'd like to present. You know, anybody who, and we've had fatalities in India from COVID-19, and those are families, individuals, their children, parents, friends, and anybody, we've all lost people we love. And when you lose people you love, no matter what the circumstances, it's very, very painful for that particular family, that particular individual, or those individuals involved with that person. But I think, you know, when I look at it, I say, how do we bring perspective to this that makes people, and again, fact-based perspective. And I broadly see that there are two groups of people who, or maybe three groups of people who are who could get infected. They're the young people who don't have any pre-existing conditions. And if you look at the data on that, which is now published, it may not be in India, but it's a fair representation of what may happen in India. The vast majority, and you'll read figures between 50 and 70% of people are asymptomatic, especially younger people asymptomatic. They show minor to no symptoms. And in India, those are the same people who drive our economy, who are the vast majority of our population. So that's one group of people. The second group of people are people who may be young, under 45, under 55, but who have diabetes, respiratory illnesses, and other illnesses that make them much more susceptible to COVID. And then there are the elderly, who maybe also have many of these underlying diseases or conditions that make them the most vulnerable. And I think the first thing to do to stimulate demand is to actually share this information so that people understand, again, fact-based data on what's happening across the world. So people get a perspective, because right now people are scared. They're scared of going out. We did at Oberoi Hotels, we did a survey, and about over 40% of people said they would not travel till a vaccine comes out. That's, and you know, we have a global population of 7.8 billion people. You have to produce the vaccine and those numbers. You then have to administer those vaccines. It's not something that is going to happen in 12 months, perhaps not even in 24 months. So we have to live with COVID for this foreseeable future. And we can't stop living. I mean, people have to go on with their lives. So I think if we bring perspective to this information that gives people, the younger people, the understanding that actually there's very little risk associated with COVID. I mean, if you really put those risks, you wouldn't even drive a car, you wouldn't leave home. For the people who are vulnerable, we really need to think about the elderly and people with certain pre-existing conditions. What is it that we can do to help those particular people from getting infected? I know one of the things we've done in our organization, and I'm sure we're not unusual in this, I'm sure everybody's done it, is that we've said, if you have any pre-existing conditions or you're of a certain age, irrespective, don't come to work, stay at home. Whether you can, if you're at a corporate office, you can work from home. But even if you're not, don't risk getting unwell, because those people are at risk. But the other people need to, realize that there is really very, very little risk, and life can't come to a stop. I'd just like to share some figures with you there, which are unrelated. And if you give me 2 more minutes, if
sure.
I'm over my time,
Go
tell me.
Go ahead.
But, I was looking at figures. Now, if I were to ask people in the audience, do we know the number of children who under the age of 5 die every year, or have died so far this year, right? These are children with parents. And I know if I lost a child, and I hope that day never, ever comes, I don't know what I would do with my life. It's probably the biggest catastrophe that a parent can face. That figure stands at, for the first 5 months of this year globally, at 3 million people. It's slightly under 3 million people. There are going to be 6 million children who are going to die under the age of 5. If you look at things like, I unfortunately don't smoke, but if you look at deaths from smoking-related illnesses, that's sitting today at just under 2 million people. It's going to double to 4 million people. If you look at people who die from road accidents, so far the number is 530,000. It's going to double to just over 1 million people. So I think, one size doesn't fit all, and we need to understand this. The children one particularly hurt me. Why aren't we doing more for our children? Why aren't we doing more for healthcare, and nutrition for people in our country? And we'll have a large number of people under the age of 5 or children who are dying in our country out of this number. Let's inform people. Let's present the facts so people can take the right decisions. Those decisions will stimulate demand, I have no doubt, and that will drive the economy, that will drive our business. And I think highlighting this is of critical importance. Governments and press and media really need to present these facts to the public so that there's awareness and people can take the right decisions for themselves. I think everybody's, Patu and all the other panelists have talked about a optimistic future in a couple of years, whether that's 2 years or 18 months or 2.5 years. And I would support that point of view as well. I just think there are 2 points that I'd like to make, or 3 points. The first one is, if we do things for a certain amount of time, it becomes habitual. And although I don't believe social distancing or safe distancing will be one of those, because I think as human beings, it's something that we'll find difficult to accept unless there's a pressing requirement. So I agree that safe distancing, once there's an effective treatment for COVID, will go away. But I think talking, that technology, I think technology will, in the next couple of months or next 18 months to 2 years, play a very important part in our business. And I think that's something that will continue. I also feel that when we are in a situation of difficulty and stress, we're much more likely to not be confined by boundaries. And therefore, I think we will be more innovative. And I think hopefully innovation may be something that will also continue. And that could be in the way we look at service. It could be multi-skilling. It could be with design of hotels. But I think there will be a greater level of innovation as well. So really 2 things, technology and innovation. I think we will still like to be close to each other. And just
sorry, go on.
I just add is, I really struggle with the fact that it needs to be one or the other. When it comes to, how do we make our guests and our colleagues feel special, even if we're wearing a face mask or a face shield and you can't see the person's smile? And I think, again, we need to innovate and I'm sure we've already done it, that, you know, so that we are as welcoming as hotels that we were before COVID, and that hasn't changed. We're just doing it from a slight distance, and we look a little bit different in terms of what we're wearing, but we have to still make guests feel that they're coming to a special place, something that they're comfortable with, that they're made to feel welcome and cared for deeply. And now I'd say cared for more deeply, more than ever before. Not only when it comes to safety and hygiene, that's, you know, I think that's a bare necessity, and we all need to do that. But also going beyond that.